the test taker will listen and read a situation. They then have to prepare to speak for 10 seconds. Once the recording starts, they have to speak up to 40 seconds. And this recording of the situation that they hear and read is basically a description of a situation. And this particular task appears 2 to 3 times in part one of the test. In terms of scoring, the scoring is done on three areas, I'll refer to these as traits for the purpose of this session. The first trait is content, and we will understand each of these traits in detail. The second trait is pronunciation, and the last one is oral fluency. Content is AI and human scored, so it's double scored. Um, Pronunciation and oral fluency are only AI scored, and there is a zero total score available if the AI and the human scorer detect the response as a template or a memorized response. So let's understand, what is this question type, respond to a situation. So it is designed basically to measure a test taker's ability to produce spontaneous speech. Spontaneous speech means speaking with very, very limited preparation. And it is a vital skill for studying abroad. In real academic and social context, students rarely have time to script or rehearse what they want to say. Whether it's clarifying instructions with a lecturer, or apologizing for being late, or making a quick request, they need to respond naturally, clearly, and appropriately in the moment. The limited preparation time mirrors these authentic interactions and ensures that responses reflect a candidate's true communicative competence, not memorized answers. Yeah. So this is a typical the next slide is a typical example of a respond to a situation question type that will appear on their screen. This one is about a research project on migratory habits. This is what it will look like visually, and there'll be an audio recording along with it that plays what they see on the screen, which is not in bold, right? So um, just to give you a glimpse of what it'll appear like on the screen.
You have to do a research project on the migratory habits of birds with a partner in your environmental studies course. You know your classmate is a really reliable student and you have some good ideas about the topic. You call him to ask if he would be your partner. What do you say to him?
Right. So you'll notice here that the audio is exactly what is written on the screen, and that is what we mean by listen and hear to the situation, right? So to understand what a test taker needs to do within this question type, the best place for any trainer to start is to look at the PTE academic score guide. You will also get a link in the chat box too if you want to download it while we are doing today's session, right? It's important to know that both the AI and human examiners have been trained to assess responses using this score guide, right? That means that the criteria are consistent, whether your students' answers are being marked by a person or by the automated system. We'll go through the main scoring areas together so we can see exactly what's expected. Put it in the chat box. The three understood to non-native, to native speakers of English. So using features of pronunciation here, and we'll deep dive into this too. So you'll have a better understanding of what we mean by pronunciation. And the last is your oral fluency, to the ability to speak clearly, speak without hesitation, repetition, false starts. So it sounds easy for the listener, right? So now let's explore screen is you will see a description of the score guide that was shared with you in the chat box. And let's just go through the words that are highlighted in over here. It says over here, the response deals with the situation effectively. Now, in respond to a situation could be that you are late to a tutorial and you want to apologize. So the communicative goal of apologizing is what we mean by dealing with the situation effectively. The next is mentions it successfully accomplishes the primary communication goal with full consideration of the context given in the prompt. Now, the primary communicative goal, if you're late for a tutorial, is basically to apologize, right? So, being able to fully accomplish the primary communication goal is when the test taker is able to apologize properly and giving the right background so that they are able to explain why they were late. And if you're late, then you're looking at some extension or apologizing for, and also thinking of how you'd like to make up for it. The second bit is about communicates with ease, flexibility, and precision throughout the response. Here, we are looking at um, your grammar, your vocabulary. Are you using it with ease, using very sophisticated language without mistakes? Flexibly, depending on what situation you're using the correct grammar and functional language, and you're not, and precision means that you are accurate while you're using it, right? The response is situationally appropriate means that we're referring to your tone, your register, because in these respond to situation question types, it may be formal, informal, so the language changes according to the degree of formality or informality. So is that kind of language being used? So the response is situationally appropriate and fully developed, expanding beyond the prompt language to provide a persuasive response. So at lower levels, test takers tend to just use the language in from the prompt, from the question type, and just repeat that. But is at a higher level, your the test taker is expected to display how they can paraphrase it, use their own words to be able to persuade the other person with their response, right? So this is at a 6. Now, if you notice the difference between a 6 and a 5, deals with the situation effectively is 6, deals with the situation adequately. You'll see a use of these kind of phrases. So just keep a note of this because this will really help you in being able to give them feedback on whether they were able to do this adequately or effectively. And you can keep referring to the score guide because this is what has been used to train the AI, to train the human scorers on giving accurate and fair scores. A 5 also talks about successfully accomplishes the primary communication goal with some consideration of the context. If you look at the first one, accomplishes the primary communication goal with full consideration. So you'll see a change in the language. Here you're saying full consideration, here it's mentioned some consideration. And there's also a question of at 6 there are no omissions, no misinterpretations, but at a 5 that can appear, right? Only minor omissions and interpretations. Omissions means that one part of the task response has not been at all or has been misinterpreted. right? Instead of apologizing for being late, the test taker, for example, is saying, giving reasons for being late, but not really apologizing for it, right? Then the second bullet point talks about communicates clearly and accurately with little restriction. So here the second bullet point goes into how language is used, right? Grammar, vocabulary. Communicates clearly and accurately with little restriction. And if you see, communicates with ease, flexibility, and precision throughout the response. So you see how the language has been changed a bit to reflect what 5 means. Limitations only evident for difficult elements. A variety of situationally appropriate expressions are used. Here, in the first one, response is situationally appropriate with and fully developed. So, fully developed, and here we're looking at a variety, right? So, that's something that you can consider when you're giving feedback to your students. So the purpose of going into such detail was to explain to you how you'll notice that the way the words are used effectively, adequately, partially, some variety, situationally appropriate. These give you an indication of what is expected at a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4, or a 5, or a 6. Let's go right down to the bottom. Let's look at 1. And over here it says that the response contains content relevant to the situation but does not achieve the primary communication goal. So if the test taker hasn't apologized, that's the primary communication goal and therefore it hasn't been achieved, and a 1 would warrant that, right? Shows lack of understanding of the situation, hasn't understood the situation, so the response doesn't reflect that. Communication is significantly restricted, contains limitations and inaccuracies. So here the language being used is very limited. The response repeats isolated words and phrases from the prompt. No hardly any paraphrasing, only using words from the question, and does not provide adequate context or meaning, doesn't give enough background when they are responding for a 1. And the last is minimally addresses the prompt. Now the prompt means that the question that they are supposed to respond to has hardly been addressed, right? In terms of apologizing, that has hardly happened here, right? So this is what a content what it means to score well in content. So we're looking at language, we're looking at addressing the task, addressing the people, the giving acknowledgement to the background, the people, and making sure that we are addressing it using the correct register, the correct tone. The tone changes if you're addressing a person, and the tone changes when you are addressing a group of people in response to a situation. Either of those situations may appear in the test. So making sure that the tone reflects changes differently if you're speaking to one person as against a group of people, right? So that's for content. Let's now move on to what respond to a situation means in terms of pronunciation. Now, in when we're responding to a situation and which is where you're supposed to display your language abilities with very limited preparation time, it becomes even more important to be able to demonstrate how you're responding through the way you're using those words, right? How you pronounce them. So if you look at a 5, let's look at a 5. It says all vowels and consonants are produced in a manner that is easily understood by regular speakers of the language. So for a 5, the test taker has to pronounce all vowels and consonant sounds accurately. The speaker uses assimilation and deletions appropriate to continuous speech. And when we say assimilation and deletion, we talk about connected speech. When we speak in rapid speech, when I say rapid speech, I mean when the speech is at a certain speed, we tend to make accommodations while speaking. So certain sounds go away, certain sounds come in. For example, would sound when you're speaking quickly as would you, right? So there's a j sound appearing, the sound, and both the words get connected together. And stress is placed correctly in all words and sentence level. Stress is fully appropriate. um, Now again, word stress, sentence stress is something that needs to be fully appropriate for a 5. Word stress is within a word, there are certain sounds that are said louder than the others. For example, when we say chicken, we pronounce the first syllable che louder than kun, right? So it's a two syllable word, and this is what we mean by word stress, right? Again, I'll give you another example. For example, a, we talk about photograph, right? Photograph, right? Photographer, photography, right? You'll notice that the photographer, the stress is on the second syllable, and that is what we mean by word stress. Now, sentence stress means that certain words, mostly content carrying words, are said louder than the others when it is said out loudly. So, this could mean certain words in the sentence like, I'd like that book, as against I'd like that book. So in the first place, you're referring to that particular book. In the certain second case, we're referring to a book and not a magazine, right? So this is what we mean by pronunciation: vowel sounds, consonant sounds, connected speech, word stress, sentence stress to be displayed accurately. So it says all, right? uh, the second one, vowels and consonant sounds are produced clearly and unambiguously. A few minor consonant vowels sounds or stress distortion do not affect intelligibility. Intelligibility means understanding. So a few minor, so there can be minor consonant and vowel and stress mistakes for a 4. All words are easily understandable, but even if there are minor mispronunciation seems completely characteristic of another language. They're not pronouncing the sounds of English, right? It seems like they're using another language. Many consonant vowel sounds are mispronounced, misordered, omitted. So here clearly there is a breakdown in communication. Listeners making a lot of effort to be able to group those words together. So they're saying words isolatedly, right? So I'll repeat. A question came up in the chat back. What does phonological simplifications mean? It means that you are simplifying certain words. Giving you an example with the word example. For example, instead of saying for example, the test taker says for e.g. because we sometimes write it in short form. That's not accepted in terms of fluency, right? Also, the use of certain words like kyunki, ki, while speaking, to be able to speak fluently. These are words that are from another language, not from English, and that is what we mean um, by false sorry phonological simplifications. um, right, acceptable rhythm with appropriate phrasing and word stress. I'm repeating whatever I said earlier. Again, that's a false start, right? No, you cannot, Harshinder, use different British and American spellings in writing. And yes, I've mentioned earlier, Utsav, we cannot use templates in PTE. Yeah. Right. So let's just keep the focus on speaking because today's question type is speaking. So now that we've looked at pronunciation,